Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Gearman. We're here with our friend and trusted producer, Max Kerman. We also have our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham, who is rocking a very nice Arkell's house coat right now. It's like a bathrobe. As we all are in our homes, working from home, this is basically the way it is and the way it's probably going to be for a while, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the pod when we get to our subjects. But before we do that, guys, how's it going? What's going on? Talk to me.
Well, actually, I've been thinking about Shane because I listened to the latest Dax Shepard podcast, or maybe it's two pods ago, and it was a different episode because I guess he had relapsed, and I was wondering what you thought of that. We hadn't really talked about it, but when I think a lot of us think about Dax, we think about you and Dax and Kristen. There's a bit of a Shane Alex thing going on there.
Yeah.
What did you make of that episode?
Well, it's weird because I hate to admit this sort of thing because I feel like I almost like there's the side of my brain that wants it to be dramatic, but neither of them cried, which was kind of like, I wanted the heartstrings to be pulled.
What'd you think, Max?
Yeah, well, again, yeah, I probably agree with Shane there, where it wasn't the most dramatic relapse of all time, but it did make me think about just the seriousness of addiction. And I think, we listen to Dax and that pod all the time. And I kind of forget that he was an addict. I know he brings it up and stuff, but I don't take it seriously at all because he seems to go about his business in such an easy, carefree kind of way. And he lives such like a fun life. And that I don't actually think about how much that would sort of hang over his every day, like those urges. And so the fact that he was taking it as seriously as he does, it kind of reminded me just like, oh yeah, addiction is a real thing and has a real like hold over people. I love the way we were just all reminded that Monica is such a huge part of their life. And I just like love that dynamic between Monica and Dax and Kristen, how she's really like, it's not a couple. Like, do you sometimes get the impression that like Dax and Monica's relationship is actually closer than Kristen and Dax's? I mean, it's different, and I'm sure there's a closeness that we don't hear about because Dax and Kristen don't have a pod together, but it does feel like that relationship actually seems to be just like a busier relationship and one that is closer in many ways. So I did like being reminded of that.
Do you feel like it's kind of like the relationship between you and manager Ash?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some similarities there for sure. And you see it also with Conan and Sona, because obviously Conan's been married for 30 years, Conan O'Brien, and his assistant Sona Movsesian, and they have a great kinship too. Yeah, so there's definitely something there. The other thing that I'm sure you were thinking about, Shane, was when they were talking about his sponsors and his other sort of close friends that he confides in when it comes to his addiction stuff, like who is he talking about? Because they roll in pretty, rarefied air in pretty high end circles. And do you know who it was? Because manager Ash did tell me that she did some internet sleuthing and she had some ideas as to who he was referring to. Actually, Ash is texting me on the side right now. That might not be a fact. Retreat. Okay, so I won't say any other names that Ash had mentioned to me. But yeah.
And when at first he was saying I was concerned about what sponsors would think, I thought he was talking about sponsors of his podcast and if he'd lose financial, like if he'd lose money. And I think maybe at one point he was alluding to that. But yeah, sometimes I do get messed up when someone says sponsors and they're talking about alcohol and AA. Yeah.
Just because you're so obsessed with sponsors, getting sponsors for this family tree, right?
Well, I do. Yes. And I do think about, sometimes like we had Kirk Cameron on an episode of Family Tree, and he has extreme beliefs that can turn a lot of sponsors off. So you do think about all these things.
Of course. Hey, Mike, did you listen to the episode?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, you did. Sorry, I just cut you out. What did you think of it?
No. I mean, yeah, it was interesting. It's interesting. He's such a like a 360 thinker. Like he literally sort of he plays out everything in his mind, and he's so eloquent at explaining exactly what his thought process is. And obviously part of his appeal is, the idea that he is a super sort of clever person and a thoughtful person. But, when he was talking about gaslighting and all that stuff. But I mean, just in general, it's so interesting to me, like the idea of like addiction as entertainment / helpful like it's like I get, there was one school of thought where it's like, him sharing his experience helps other people who have gone through similar things. And it's not a world that I'm super unfamiliar with, like do things in my own life, not personally, but people around me. And so whenever it's like it comes up, or it's like you're listening to people who have relapse or have issues with, opiates or any sort of drug, alcohol issues, it's always fascinating territory. We've listened to Marin talk about this for a long time. This seems to be sort of like a common through theme with a lot of people in the entertainment industry and in many, many other fields. But whenever like an episode like that comes out and it becomes a talking point, like, oh, did you hear Dax relapsed? And then we're all sort of talking about it. We all sort of rush to listen to it. And I find myself thinking about what that is exactly. You know what I mean? It's like almost like it's voyeurism, and that's what all of that is. But it also is helpful, I'm sure, to people who have gone through those things or people that can relate to those things. But I always try to figure out what I'm doing when I'm listening to him talk about it. I'm like, I get that he's famous and successful and he's had this relapse, and a thing he talks about a lot is his 16 years of sobriety and all of that. And this was a big revelatory thing where he's like, I haven't been truthful and it's not 16 years, and that means something to him. And we listen to that, and his authenticity and his willingness to share is what is appealing. But yeah, I'm like, what it, like it is, it's like heartache or like sort of like personal sort of like hurt as entertainment in a weird way. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
It's what makes life interesting, right? If it was just a normal episode, we wouldn't rush to hear it. But the fact that it's different, we're all looking to think like, how would we handle something like that? If something crazy in our life happened, what would we do? Oh, let's hear how Dax handles this. Then if my life falls off the rails, maybe I'll impart something from this. So that's the way I'm watching it, as like a reality show. I'm also looking for tools on how to handle things that are going wrong in my own life. And I'm so invested in his life because I've been following him for so long. I also want to be in all these conversations that people are having about it, because I know it's going to be heavily downloaded and listened to, maybe by people who haven't been listening for the last few years.
One of my favorite games to play is like, if I was like A+ Hollywood celeb, how public would I be with my family and my personal life? Because sometimes you see examples of people that I think kind of go about it all the wrong way, or clearly fishing for attention or oversharing in ways that I think like reflects badly on them. And then there's others that you don't see any of, and you kind of go, can I get a little taste, please? Like, apparently Ryan Gosling and Eva Mendes are married and have children, and we hardly know this. And I kind of want to be like, come on, give us a little taste, right? So I personally obviously like the Tom Hanks Rita marriage. I think that's a good level of sort of public showing. Ted Danson and his wife, they seem to do it right. Who else is like Seth
Rogen?
Seth Rogen and his wife, they kind of do it nicely. What do you guys think? Who do you model yourself after? Who do you like, and who annoys you?
Well, for me, it's less who I model myself after and more who I feel like is closer to already how I model myself. So I look for like-minded people who are doing things I'm already doing. And like you said, a lot of people bring up Dax, that like they used to bring it up in terms of my appearance. I look like Dax. Like when I was growing up, I had blonde hair like Dax, and everyone would just say there was like physical similarities. And then I listened to him on the podcast. I'm like, oh, we do think the same. And like Mike said, he's 20 times more articulate than I'll ever be, and more intelligent also. But I do tend to have the same views.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I don't think of it in those terms, like you said, like modeling after or whatever. Because I guess it's like I'm always thinking about the fact that it's like we all have social media, so we're presenting some sort of front to the world, whatever that is. The people we went to high school with, the people that don't know us, the fact that we have this podcast. There's people that I don't know who are probably checking out my shit. So like I'm sort of cognizant of all of that. But in general, even like amongst, say, like whether it's people you work with or your social groups, and they can be different social groups. I tend to be less sherry just in general. Like, and part of that's just like, the nature of my relationship with Danica and things like that. But then at the same time, it's like I have a public Instagram and I post stuff of Winona all the time. So one might say that that's sharing a ton of things, but I think in general, I tend to not share too much. But yeah, I don't think, and my thing though, as far as like when you say who annoys you and who do you think is doing it right, I'm kind of like whatever. It's a personal question to the person that's doing the sharing. You know what I mean? It's like if
Of
there's
course,
somebody,
but this is a judgy question. I just want you to judge.
but I find when people judge, like right now, actually online, very sort of sadly and tragically, Chrissy Teigen and John Legend, they lost their child, and that she was pregnant and the baby didn't make it, and she posted like a very intimate photo online. And more so than sort of her sharing this moment and for all the people that have gone through that experience and how that might be is either healing or the opposite, whatever that is. I'm very fascinated by sort of the discussion around it and people sort of attacking her for like wondering about the mechanics of taking a photo in that moment and then sharing it and sort of like, and I understand the conversation, but I'm also kind of like, this is the world we've been living in for almost 20 years now. Like, I'm just like, I don't understand how people still find like, life as sort of like the sharing experience or like at its most base level, like entertainment as like something shocking. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like I tend to like, if somebody is like, they overshare, I tend to defend it and just be like, that's like kind of what they're doing. And I don't find it annoys me too much because I don't really follow those things like very strongly. I kind of like when they flare up or they become part of like sort of like the zeitgeist, then I'll sort of like check in, but it's not like I'm watching reality shows or something like that. So it's not, I don't really get too annoyed by the endeavor because I'm not super engaged with it. But I get what you're saying. You're sitting here going, Mike, fuck off. We're trying to make fun of some people here. I totally understand. And I'm like, I don't have anybody. Who annoys you, Maxie?
Well, good question. Who does? Yeah, I think there's the really thirsty ones that don't really have any substance that are just sort of like
Bella
showing
Thorne's
off their
kind of annoying.
Yeah, their wealth and good looks. If they're not offering anything more than that, then I can kind of get an eye roll. But actually, Shane, because I obviously saw the Chrissy Teigen thing. It's obviously so tragic. And I was thinking there's probably a good topic for this family tree to talk about, as opposed to just three dudes that are going through it. But the vitriol that you see in some corners of Twitter and the internet towards Chrissy, because she's been a very like outspoken pro-choice feminist sort of personality in the culture, and then seeing, I think, I don't even want to get into it, but it's just very depressing to see how people are obviously piling on her during a really difficult time for that family.
Yeah. It's, I mean, even not celebrities. I like, you see this, like, I don't go on Facebook a ton, but when I do go on, you'll see people from that you went to high school with, people that you met, along the way in your life's journey. And it's like, everybody has a different level of sharing. You'll have one person who like overshares the most insane sort of like sex quizzes, and you're like, what are you doing? Or like, they're having a fight with their significant other, and they're putting the whole thing on blast, like in a very sort of like public facing way. And, you read it and you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe you put this on here, but, and I would never do that. And as I'm reading it, I'm like judging a little bit. I'm going, Jesus, I'm like, do you really want to put this on? This is a little bit embarrassing. But ultimately, I'm like, you know what? If this gets them through the night to like vent and put it on their Facebook because that's their way of sort of getting a message to the person, whatever their reason, if it makes them get through the night and feel a little better, I tend to sort of like cut them some slack, even though personally I'm kind of like, yo, that ain't it. I'm just kind of like, I hope that whatever they had to do helps them sleep better. And if Chrissy Teigen in that moment posting that photo, regardless of all the vitriol and hate that's going to come back at her, or people acting like it's staged or whatever the hell it is that they're saying, it's like, if that helped her even like a modicum in sort of like their moment of pain and all that stuff, it's like, then let her post it. Let anybody post, Yeah,
and it helps you shift the focus. Now all of a sudden you're focusing on helping other people, and it's a way of like grieving too. I don't know. I think it helps far more people than it hurts. Like all the people who are complaining about it, they haven't gone through that yet. And I think if they did, they would really appreciate all the things Chrissy's doing with that photo and her message and spreading this story. Yeah,
and it's okay if you want to be in a cynical place when you're like, oh, Chrissy Teigen's just doing this for more attention or whatever, or whoever the person is that's sharing some intimate part of their life. You can feel that way. But also there's nothing, I don't know. I think if like, even as a songwriter, when I'm sharing some like emotional part of my life, it's just like, well, is he doing this for, commercial purposes? Like, I guess, I am. Is he doing this for people to to look at him adoringly, yeah, I guess I'm doing that. But I'm also doing something that feels cathartic to me. And if it's helping somebody else get through a hard situation or feel connected to the piece of music, then that's great too. So things can be like, I think, in everyday life, completely selfish, but also helpful at the same time. And that's like even jobs that people have. It's like most people who are helpers, whether they're social workers or teachers or anything, they also go, I'm doing this for myself too. There's a part of me that likes being helpful. There's a part of me that likes telling people what to do or offering good advice or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if that helps somebody else get through something, then that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the days of things being so like delineated or like defined are like, it's become so blurred. Everybody's sort of everything all at once. Like it's like, and we can exist in sort of a multitude of ways. Like you said, Max, writing a song can be something that means something personal to you and is very cathartic, but then can also serve all those other purposes, like you said. And I just think that us as a collective, we're starting to sort of like just acknowledge that and sort of like you aren't just, if you're just like the football quarterback, well, you might also write poetry. And if you're the poet, you might also love playing soccer. All these like defined roles have been getting exploded for the last couple decades. And I feel like it's just sort of like now we sort of accept all of these things. Like you said, it's like, because there's always that argument. It's like the most basic argument. It's like, well, you do charity because, you know, it makes you feel good. It's like, yeah, but it can also have like, it has two purposes. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm also helping, but yes, I get a dopamine hit off of helping or whatever that gives you. It's like, but it can serve multiple sort of purposes at the same time.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone who helps with charity doesn't feel good about it. So anyone who's doing it is doing it selfishly in some way.
Yeah.
It's selfish. Whatever adjective you have to describe what that is. But it's true. You're right. There's something that's self-serving, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Man, we like jumped into a topic and got heavy like right away. We didn't even catch up on what we've been up to.
What have we been doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel
what
like
have you been up to, Mikey boy? I feel like you got something good cooking.
Well, it's not necessarily good. It's like, but you guys know me. I'm not really like a handyman. Well, I ripped out I ripped out my whole deck yesterday. With my father-in-law. We were going to get someone to because our deck was a little bit old, so we needed to change the wood, and we called around, and like it's just like it was crazy. Like nobody's available for months. So he's recently retired, and he's like a busybody. He like knows how to do all these things. So he's like, I got time, let's do it. But now that means that like I've also got to do it, you know?
God, it sounds terrible.
I thought of you, Max, while I was doing it. I was like, Max would never do this in a million years.
Do anything possible to get out of this situation.
But you're not going to put it back together, are you?
Yeah, we tore it out. We're going to rebuild it.
I'm getting anxious just listening to this.
Yeah, that sucks. Can't you just say you're busy with work or something?
No, but here's the thing. Like, so first of all, the hilarious thing is it's like, first of all, deck boards are really hard to get out. And it's like, I don't have the man strength that he has. He's ripping out all of the boards. It's like, I'm like struggling with one. And then I'm like, I'll move the wood to the trailer.
Yeah.
He's like 60.
How old is he?
Yeah, he just turned 60. Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever be at a point where you could beat him in an arm wrestle? Like in like 15 years?
More like 25.
He's such a man's man.
Oh man, he was awesome. He's like, and he's got like his like saw back there, and I'm just like, I'm hanging out. Like Shane, you mentioned a few pods ago, you're good at like helping. You know, it's like you're clever. You know how to help. It's like I can do that. I'm like, okay, where can I help in the margins? You know. So Danica was like, so Mike, like me and her dad were in the backyard still pulling up boards, and she's like, so Mike, you think you're gonna really get into this like deck building thing? And I was like, Dan, I think I had a really nice time hanging out with my father-in-law this afternoon, but this is gonna be a one-off thing.
But has he seen behind the curtain and know that you're not like your prototypical man?
That was a kind way to put it. Yeah. Oh, he knows who I am, man. He knows. He knows the deal.
How long did it take before you like were willing to admit, like, hey, listen, I'm a little different?
I think he knew right away. Like when I started dating Dan.
Oh, your hair was quite long, yeah.
I worked in TV. I was like in a band. I had like long hair. Like, you know, it's like he's like he knew right away. But he was he's been great. And so that was really fun. Well, I mean, fun to hang with him. It's not fun to like do manual labor where you're ripping out, 4,000 pounds of wood and then throwing it onto the back of like a trailer or whatever.
Did you have tunes going?
No. I said
Nothing,
to Danica, how surprised would you be if like right before we started, Owen pulled out ear pods and he's like, "You mind if I listen to a podcast?" While he like did the work, like he wanted to, block me out. No, we didn't listen to anything. We just put our heads down and did the damn thing. And like Danica made us some lunch.
Is there any idle chatter going on?
Oh yeah, no, we were chatting a lot.
Does it ever get like you're onto a topic like, how about those J's, and hammer, then you're done with the J's? Is it just like, are you comfortable having like 20 minutes of just like hammering and board ripping?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
Again, he did all the board ripping pretty much. I was just like moving wood around and like, I'll take the nails out, but yeah, totally fine with silence. We've known each other forever, man.
That's good.
He's such a classic guy. You like old school guy. Like Owen looks like a dad from the 1960s. Like it's like, you better have my daughter home by 11 kind of thing. I'm like, okay, yes sir, like that kind of thing. I'd be fucking terrified him.
Totally. And then the funny thing is, it's like he's sneaky funny. He's got jokes and stuff. You know what I mean? And they're actually more funny because you're like, oh, he's like a serious dude, and then he's like, he busts jokes. So now it's good.
Mike, this thing happens for me in these sorts of situations where people are like kind of shower me with praise for doing like a very little amount of physical, like, oh, Max, you can lift that? Oh, good. Okay, good job. Like completely seriously. Like if I ever have to like bring anything like sort of mildly heavy out to the car, like Lauren always is like, you can, oh, great job. Like I get encouraged like I'm a senior citizen or like an 8-year-old boy, but like not like a 33-year-old man who like kind of exercises regularly. How do they treat you in these situations?
I'm in the same boat, like low bar, like the fact that Mike, and the thing too is it's like I was very cognizant of like he's coming to help us build this deck with his time. Like I did not have my phone out there at all. Like I'm not looking at my phone. This is Owen's time. Like he's doing this. So like all of that stuff, I was just like, I gotta like, I'm taking this seriously. But to your point, such a low bar. It's like, I guarantee when he told the rest of the family I was ripping out like decks with like Mike yesterday, they probably all would have been like, how much work did Mike actually do?
You know what? I think another thing I have going for me, and you maybe use this to a slight degree, but probably not as much as I can, is that my job is kind of mysterious and I have my hands in a lot of different pots. So if I have to go and take a phone call, like it could be for like, like a deal with the band that's worth tens of thousands of dollars or something like that, but it's usually just like I need to talk to like Shane about the pod or something. It's like I need to make plans for dinner, like, but no one really knows. This is the thing that gets me by in life, is that no one really knows.
Well, this has always been a weird thing with the job thing at times. Is it's like, this is another reason I like going to an office, because it's like Shane and I, like we write commercials all the time, and it's like to get inspired to write a commercial or whatever, it's like it takes this whole confluence of like popular culture, entertainment, like the way something's shot, all these ideas make a soup that then allows you to sort of like write a script that you think is, good enough to pitch to your creative director. But like to make that soup, sometimes you just got to binge 5 hours of TV. And sometimes it's hard to explain that you're not just chilling on the couch for 5 hours because maybe you stayed up late watching basketball and drinking a few too many Coors Light. But it's like, that is the job.
I'm working.
But Shane, do you ever find that where it's like what looks like just you being lazy is actually you consuming things that you then apply to your work?
Yeah, it sucks. Like when we were in the office, sometimes I would be like cruising YouTube looking for inspiration or ideas. So even at work doing the job that you're supposed to do, there was guilt associated with it. And sometimes there's a woman who works with us named Brooke. She would come around and she would look at all my tabs, and it would be the most ridiculous, like cat food commercial.
Hold on, how would she look at your tabs? Like as like checking up on you?
Well, she would come over to, if Mike was working on a project, she works for Brand Partnership. So Mike sat right behind me. So she'd swing over to talk to Mike, glance at my computer and see all the stuff I have up. And she'd like lean right in and look and just laugh at me. And I'm like, I'm working. This is for work. I'm like, but I keep a million tabs open too. And like I minimize windows, and I'll have, you can kind of see all the YouTube things I'm looking at.
Also, you were using for sound effects, you would use like a YouTube downloader that is like, it's like virus ridden. So what it did was to his computer, because it used this program, it would just do random pop-ups. So you turn around and look at Shane's computer, and there'd just be pop-up ads for like erection pills or like a woman in a bikini. It was the weirdest shit.
Like our boss would come up and he'd be like, "Oh, hey Shane, I just want to talk about this project." And a naked woman with her boobs out, and it would say, "Come fuck me now," would pop up. And I'd be like, "Oh yeah." And I would be trying to find it to click it off as he's talking to me about the project I'm working on. And he saw every time and just never said anything. And there's another one that looks like a big blue penis, and it's like one penis enlargement.
Oh man. And they pile up, because whatever this corrupt software that you used at some point, it would just be bing, bing.
Oh, I have it on my home computer now too, because I use YouTube Downloader so often. I need a pop-up blocker, but can't figure that out.
Yeah. So anyway, hopefully the deck goes well. You guys been doing anything? I mean, we never see each other anymore.
Let's get to topics. There's nothing.
Yeah,
good,
topics.
Unless Shane.
All right.
No, I got my
Mike. I got a good intro for you. So let me send it to the pod group, and you can open with this.
Okay. Okay. Max has just sent me. This is a tweet from the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
1 hour ago.
1 hour ago. This came through as we're recording this on a Thursday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Donald Trump says, "I won the debate big based on compilation of polls, etc. Thank you." So there you have it, guys. Donald Trump won the debate. That does lead us perfectly into our first segment, which is the debate that happened this week. Danica and I watched it in its entirety. Shane and I were on a work call yesterday, and it came up. I mean, it was obviously one of the things that I think everybody watched. I'd really be interested to see the numbers on that, just as far as ratings. Max, did you watch it in its entirety?
Yeah, I did.
All right, so let's first, Shane, let's get to you. What did you think? Because I think you said you were watching something else, and then you basically were like, "I got to check this shit out."
Yeah, I was watching The Vow, which was an amazing documentary that you, not the movie The Vow, not like that cheesy movie. There's a documentary about a cult that like NXIVM or whatever.
Oh,
and
NXIVM. That's right.
Yeah, Mike had recommended it to me, and I've seen a bunch of cult docs, but this one was particularly good and really sucked me in. But then I knew Alex wanted to watch the debate, and I was kind of like, what this is going to be. It's going to be exactly what happened. I was like, just like this useless information that's going on. You never really glean anything from it. It's just people over talking each other, and it's who gets the better comebacks. And she's like, no, it's gonna be really good. So then we turned it on, and half an hour in, it was just nonstop people over talking. And like, credit to Alex, I was laughing my ass off. It was very entertaining, and Trump, just Trump's remarks, and then when Biden would try to get a zinger in, it just had a funny vibe, and how direct Biden was, like, you are the worst president we've ever had. Like Biden would just like no metaphor or anything, just say he's terrible. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always surprised that people expect those debates to be anything more than what they are. And I find people are always surprised. Like, oh, that was just a shit show. It's like, yeah, of course. It's just a circus. It's a boxing match. It's like so hyped up, and that's what it's intended for, just ratings.
Mm-hmm. Maxie, what did you think? Who did you think won?
I think they both kind of lost. I mean, obviously, we all want Biden to win, and Trump was just a maniac. And I felt bad for the moderator, Chris Wallace.
Oh, he was terrible.
Yeah.
One thing about Chris Wallace that even in the moment I turned to Danica, but they asked Trump a question about the gatherings he has at his rallies and the fact that nobody's social distancing, nobody's wearing masks. He's not even encouraging it. And so basically, these are like potential cesspools for COVID. And they're like, Donald, you had thousands of people at your rallies. Joe, you've kept it much smaller. And then Donald's like, yeah, because he couldn't get the numbers at his rallies. And then Chris Wallace laughed. I was like, Chris, I know you're losing control here, but show a modicum of like restraint. Like, he laughed at the zinger. I couldn't believe it.
It was a good zinger though. And he could have been laughing like in exasperation more than like, oh
yeah. Sorry to cut you off though, Max.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of moments of high comedy, and just like reinforces this idea that Trump like has no interest in like being a politician or like implementing any real policy or caring about anybody other than himself. But I was thinking about like, okay, is this going to convince anybody one way or another? And I guess the one thing that maybe we can feel good about, and this isn't a good reason, this is actually the worst possible reason, but because America, and a lot of places around the world obviously, have like racist and sexist tendencies, Joe Biden is just such a familiar middle American seeming person that he doesn't scare anybody off. Because I think there's some people that are afraid of like the left and how progressive, the left might be if they take over. And even though somebody like Kamala or Elizabeth Warren, I think are way, 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 way more equipped for the job, and would push the party in a really good, ideal direction. There's something about Joe Biden just being a sleepy ass, boring white guy who I think is generally well liked and well respected. That I think that is a comforting thing for if you're talking about specifically swing voters in the middle. That basically will decide the election when it comes to Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida. I can just see a lot more of those people going, "Oh, Trump actually kind of seems nuts, and COVID sucks right now." And Biden, I know, won't turn the country upside down in a way that I've been like scared off on when it comes to Warren or Kamala Harris or any of the other progressives. So that was the one thing that I guess was a positive in the debate, where it's just like Biden just reinforced himself to be like a pretty basic dude, and hopefully that encourages people to get him and vote. But I don't know, time will tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about like he's like a placeholder for what they imagine a president could be. Like he's a palatable alternative to Trump for those people in the middle that couldn't go super far left, but they're like, oh no, Joe, I can see being president, and then they'll maybe their distaste for Trump will push them just far enough left to vote for Joe. Is what you're saying?
Totally, and of course
that's
the
the
other
bet the
argument
Dems made, by the way.
Of course, right? Because the other option, the other route you could have gone was no, let's get somebody like a Bernie. Or somebody who's way further to the left, and it's like all the people that are like very far on to the left on the spectrum would go, okay, now I'm going to get a vote. But I don't know how many people are like that actually, statistically speaking, compared to the people that.
Well, we have some pretty fiery friends who are like very far left, and they always get very, they're very angered at the idea of Joe being the guy that is leading the party.
Totally, and I get it. I told Dan Hamilton is going to listen to this pod and go like, "You're a fucking idiot." I
didn't want to name names.
No, it's true. He's going to be like, "This is stupid." But I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I do think that there is something to be said about somebody who can, if nothing else, but for the sake of getting Trump out, somebody who can like appeal to the average person who isn't politically engaged and just kind of wants to get on with it.
I feel like if I was an alien who just came to Earth and I was watching that debate, I'd be like, ooh, this orange skinned guy really, like, he's dominating this older gentleman.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it felt like he totally manhandled him.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I'd mentioned this before. Like, I thought a lot about as I was watching it. Is I'm just thinking strategically. I'm like, how do you combat this? Like, how if you're Joe? Like, I thought a lot about what if this was Obama running against Trump? I'm like, how would Obama handle this? I'm like, how do you do it? I'm like, if you match his energy, you seem just as unhinged. Mm-hmm. I'm like, if you step back and try to like take the high road, you seem weak and like you can be dominated. I'm like, if you go over and punch him, you're crazy. If you walk off the stage, well, then you're a quitter. Like, it's like, how do you do it back to Trump? It's like he's kind of found this weird playground shit where it's like they've emboldened him enough. He is the most, powerful person in the world, sensibly. But because he plays with like playground tactics, it's like nobody knows how to handle it. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, how would you guys match or debate Trump? Would you try to match the energy? Like, what advice, Shane, would you give somebody debating Trump in that form?
Well, I think everyone's thought about this, but you would just say, hey, could you please cut his mic? Like, we can't have civil discourse here like this. Like, I know this isn't like the most civil time to be the nature of a debate isn't really civil discourse, but I can't even get a word out edgewise. Could we cut his mic, please? And I'll just say, this is the only way we can go forward. We have to cut him out or remove him.
And if they don't, you walk off?
No, I would just continue saying, like, there's no way we're not getting anywhere here. Like, I'd rather just stand here and say nothing. Yeah, I wouldn't walk off, but I would just point out how silly it is, and I wouldn't try to go to his level, because you're never going to beat him at his own game. But if you just say how flawed the game is that he's trying to play, and how dumb it is to keep his mic on, and how ridiculous it makes the whole event, I think there would be a lot of sound logic there, and people would point that out. Like, everyone was pointing it out on Twitter anyway.
I think that Trump is at his worst when he is getting really angry and sweaty and fiery. I think that's when people go, this guy looks like an insane person. I think he's actually at his best when he's like laughing and making fun of the other person. So I would try to think about like who's the person who could like kind of outwit Trump and get him frustrated, because, and it's hard because I think a lot of politicians like to think of themselves as funny, and they actually, like, when they try to give him a zinger, he gives it right back, and he's actually better at that game. I do, obviously I'm going to say this, but I do think Obama would kind of be able to run circles around him, because Obama's so cool and he's so fucking funny that he'd be able, and he also is like, can be long-winded, but he can also kind of deliver like good one-liners. And Obama's got a great smile and a great sense of humor that I think that would frustrate Trump. Where it's like, so obviously Biden doesn't have that skill set. Hillary definitely didn't have that skill set. Kamala's a little too serious. Bernie, I think, weirdly could be good about it because he
would have. I think of the two of them in a debate, that would have been yelling to the extreme, because Bernie would have matched the Trump energy. I feel like, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He'd get so frustrated, but in I think a fiery good way. Right. But yeah, I definitely like think, because you obviously want to take the debate seriously, but if you just had like supreme ultimate confidence and you were really quick and funny, like who's, like, I'm trying to think like who'd be that person. I know obviously standing in a suit is like a weird thing, but like a comedian, like a Chris Rock or something like that.
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand would be very fascinating in a debate with Trump, because Russell also doesn't mind just talking ad nauseum and refusing. Like I feel like he might have the force of will to go back and just so quick to jump on the things that Trump says to him. That's a good one.
Okay, let's play another game, guys. Okay, who in the Champagne Boys would make the best debate? Think about the characters. Let's say it's like about politics. Who would be good at it? If you had to sort of convince a crowd of political onlookers that were voting for you, who would be good?
Savelli.
What would be like a marquee matchup even? We don't even have to
like who would we want to have debating against each other?
Yeah. That'd be fun.
Well, I'd like to see Savelli and Dan would be good. I think Savelli would win.
That would be
just because Dan gets more flustered.
Yeah.
Savelli is a professor at McMaster. I'd like to see Savelli and Burchell would be entertaining, because they're both smart and they're both well spoken and they both have a long history with each other. The Nut, I should say, the Nut and Dr. Savelli. I think that would be kind of good. Mike, you'd be good. I wonder who you'd be good against. Actually, Mike versus Shane would be pretty good. I'd pay for that.
Well, it'd be so, because I'm so dumb at politics. Like, is the topic politics?
Yeah, but does Trump know anything about politics? Trump doesn't know anything about politics.
Yeah. I guess when I do get into like a game mode, if I'm playing a game where I'm like at Randall's Cottage, how we played that lawyer game where we pretend we're lawyers bullshitting about any given topic. I'm good at that.
It sounds like a fun game. How does this game work?
You just pretend you're a lawyer, and Mike would pretend he's a lawyer, and then you're given a topic and you have to say the pros of it, even if you don't believe in it. You have a healthy debate and you see who wins. And I was very good at that game. But if it's real life and I have to say real facts and truths that I'm supposed to believe, I'm not good at defending my point necessarily if I don't know everything about the topic.
Yeah, but I think in general, like regardless of topic, like I think you're a very good debater. We've had, Max, if you had sat next to us for the last decade at work, you would have heard a bunch of them. I think of sometimes Alex or like Candace or Brandon who have like sat around us, and it's just like how many times we've ended up in like a 2-hour long conversation / debate.
Yeah, where we're having those like conversations where we think only we can hear it, but literally the entire office bubble can hear what we're saying. And yeah, those got intense.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Max, do you think you'd be good in debate?
I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe. What do you guys think? Do you think I'd be good in the debate against some quick-minded person? I don't know if I would. I'm
not really. No, because you too like see the other person's side of things too often.
The one thing I would say that I am good at, I think I'm good at getting a consensus with people or trying to see the goodness in different kinds of groups, not obviously the white supremacist groups, when he like refuses.
Is this where you defend the Proud Boys?
Yeah, absolutely not. But I would say that Trump tried to get Biden to say you hate the police officers.
Yeah.
And Biden kind of was clumsy in that response. And he said, like, there's some bad apples and stuff. I just think he said things that would piss off certain groups, and Trump kind of got him in that corner on a few occasions. And I feel like I'd be able to sort of handle that a little bit better.
Yeah, there was a few things where it's like you saw Joe walking into traps that Trump had clearly decided to lay before they even stepped on the stage. And then the one trap that actually Joe didn't set, but the trap that Chris Wallace set was the one about the denouncing white supremacy and hate groups. And then Trump sort of did that thing where he dances around the subject because he knows those people are going to vote for him. So he needs to give them just enough to know that he's on their side. But it was so weird. But this is another thing about that, though. Sorry, quickly back to the debate is the next day that and even in the moment that dominated the headlines. Like Trump won't denounce. He tells the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by.
Stand by. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, all I kept thinking is it's like, this is the exact same playbook from 4 years ago when he said the thing about Mexicans. It's like Trump does this, and then Van Jones and the CNN panel and, Jake Tapper and all these people are like, this is the end. Our country has never sunk this low, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they lose their minds and they do it for 24 hours. But it's like, that is what worked for him before. So why would he change? And it's like, why are they surprised? And you would think that should be the end of it for him. It's like, well, he basically wouldn't denounce white supremacy or whatever. He danced around it. It's like, we're going to see. We're going to see come November how much of an effect this has on it, because we know more than we knew 4 years ago. But if you're Trump, he's literally just going back to the exact same place. Like, the high pick and roll keeps working. I keep scoring. Why would I do anything different? He's like, I keep winning this way. All I do is win. So of course he's doubling down on that. And I'm so fascinated to see if it pays off for him in November or if it doesn't.
Bruce Springsteen did an interview the other day, and he was like, he's going to lose. He's losing. And if Bruce says that, then I believe it. So I'm very excited.
Wow.
About that. Yeah.
Shane, do you believe the boss about this one?
Seems like he's going to lose, but it seemed like he was going to lose last time.
Yeah, that's true.
So how can you trust that?
I do think if he does lose, he's going to have to lose in a hell of a landslide for him to actually leave, because he's going to stick around. He's like that house guest you can't get rid of. Like, he's just going to keep finding reasons.
But he doesn't have squatters' rights, does he? Like, he can't just stay in the White House. Can't they just arrest
This is what
him?
he did. This is why by him picking these last 3 Supreme Court justices is he's going to stay until they decide. He's basically trying to muddy the waters. This is what all this the fraudulent ballots. This is what he's laying the groundwork, basically, that if it's a close election, he can basically contest it, and then the Supreme Court will ultimately rule him, because he's put 3 of those new judges in. They're going to rule in his favor.
But let's say he has to leave. Do you think it'll be like Waco?
I think in a landslide he will leave. I think he can't claim fraud if it's a landslide. But I think if it's even a couple million votes or whatever it is, or like one of the swing states is a couple million, I think he's going to stay like Waco.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
It'd be very entertaining in a weird way if it did become Waco-esque. I'd love to see that movie.
Well, this is it. It's just obviously his Supreme Court choices and other things he's done in office do have real political ramifications, but that feels so secondary to Trump just being the center of attention. It feels like his wanting to be president has little to do with policy and more to do with just him being the center of the reality show. Do you know what I mean? And that's the main reason why he wants to stay. It's just he's like, no, this job is awesome. I love getting fired up, and I love everybody talking about me 24 hours a day.
And it's just fun to win something. Any contest is fun to win. It's true. People want to catch the T-shirt when it's being thrown into the crowd more than they want the T-shirt.
Very true. It's very true.
One little point that I want to make, though, Mike, you're saying how Van Jones and Jake Tapper, all these people who I really like as journalists, they were incredulous after the debate. They were like, that was a shit show. That was a flaming piece of garbage inside of a blah 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 inside of a blah blah blah. It was a funny quote, but it does kind of make me a little weary. And this actually kind of speaks to the thing we were just talking about at the beginning of the show, where it's like, you guys are all becoming more famous and rich because of Trump. And this is this media industrial complex that we're all having to suffer through. And I sometimes wonder, I'm like, I know it's your duty, your divine duty to be journalists and to report the truth because you have this divine, word from God that we are journalists and we must uphold the Constitution. They talk about it in this, as if they're sent from the heavens to like report the truth. But it's also kind of like, no, you guys just like being famous and rich, and the business, at least when it comes to like cable news, is kind of doing really well. But I just kind of find the whole thing a little off-putting. And I was just like, is there another way to deal with this where it doesn't seem so obviously self-serving when it comes to like the amazing ratings that CNN is getting, and how it has completely overtaken all of our lives to the point where we're fucking going insane because this guy's in our face every fucking day, and there's actually other tangible things we could be doing within our communities that we should focus on, but no one fucking does, because all we're doing is watching Trump all day long, because these like really smart, well-meaning, quote unquote, journalists are telling us that this is what we need to focus our attention to, because like the fate of the country rests in this election, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I do sometimes wonder, like, okay, so not related, but kind of related. There was this incident that happened in the soccer league yesterday. It was the San Diego soccer team, professional team. I don't know exactly what league, basically left the game about 3/4 of the way through because one of their players, who's openly gay, was called a homophobic slur. It's a really interesting story. And the coach of the team is a former U.S. soccer player, Landon Donovan. And basically the team just said, we're not going to play. See you later. They were winning 3-1, and they just left the pitch. And that's how they decided to make their statement. I was like, that's fucking awesome. That actually speaks more to the moment than anything else. We're just not participating. Sometimes I wish CNN would just say, we're not doing it. See you tomorrow, and just went black or something like that. I just wish more people just said, we're not going to even interact with the bully, because by doing that, we give the bully that much more of a platform, and we galvanize the bully and his supporters that much more. Anyway, that's a fantasy. Obviously, it's not practical on any level, but I did like the way the soccer team dealt with it, saying, well, that's it. We choose not to engage in this battle because this battle is like fundamentally unfair on a human level, and fuck that. See you later. I'm gonna do something else with my time. That's my rant.
Yeah,
Nice.
No, it was a good rant. That's one of the best Max rants we've had in a long time. That was like a good solid 4 minutes, sir.
Sorry.
No, it's good. You're passionate. I love passionate Max.
What do you think is worse, CNN or Fox?
Fox for sure, because Fox like does not chooses to like not pay attention to like certain things that are like so obviously more pressing, and the angle they choose to take on stories is sort of laughable. Mike, what were you laughing? What do you say?
Well, I saw when there was like a bombshell sort of like New York Times story about his taxes that came out right before the debates. This was a significant report with like credible sources. They had the taxes. And I saw a tweet that said like ABC News, his taxes, CNN, his taxes, NBC News, his taxes, Fox, Harvest Soup is great this year. Soup Channel, his taxes. Like you know what I mean? But so it's just like, like you could argue that maybe CNN with the hyperbole goes too hard on the end of the world. But I mean, I don't know. We're in kind of unprecedented territory with Trump and sort of the way that he's using the office. But Fox, and I go to foxnews.com almost every day, like they outright ignore like major stories. Like they didn't have the taxes anywhere on their website. Like, and that like to me, that's like, if you're fronting as like a journalistic entity, that's wild to me. You have to at least discuss it. You know what I mean? Even if you want to knock it down or something like that. Why? What do you think, Shaney?
Oh, I just thought it'd be funnier. Like I bought Fox. I called Bell for some other reason, and then they, sucked me into this package where like I could get all these channels for $3. And it was like, oh, you still have 2 channels left. I'm like, I'm really curious what Fox looks like. So I turned it on for a laugh because I thought it would be really silly. But they were talking to people on the left and like had a really normal debate between the journalists, and it was very respectful. And I was thinking, I watch CNN like 90% of my time when I'm watching news, and I noticed they never talk to anyone on the right and have any discourse. And then I watched it a few days later, and they were having another really civil conversation with the person on the left and acquiescing to certain points, and it seemed really civil. And I was like, geez, I didn't think Fox would be this way. And then it made me think, oh, CNN's never really has any give when it comes to their opinions. They're never like, oh, you're right here but wrong here.
One of the things about Fox is there's kind of like what they consider the news division. So someone like Chris Wallace, or like the people that consider themselves journalists, like that have like shows during the day or they report the news, they will like sort of, if they get an interview with Trump will like, he's angry at Fox sometimes because there's certain like sort of pods within the network that do journalism. The problem is that they're most famous for that block with like Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham. And basically that's all opinion. And that's like the primetime programming that basically feeds the heavy right and conspiracy theories into sort of the older voting block. Whereas that sort of midday news stuff maybe is what you're talking about. I don't know.
I think it might have been Laura. Is she a blonde woman?
Yeah. She's the one that told LeBron to shut up and dribble.
Oh, okay. No, it wasn't her then.
Yeah.
No, it was another blonde woman.
Yeah, they only kind of hire blonde ladies.
It is fascinating though that you got the channel and you started watching it.
Yeah, well, I thought it'd be fun because people are always saying to avoid an echo chamber, start listening to the other side so you actually know what's out there. So I was like, okay, let's actually see this, and I thought I'd have a little fun too. But
I'm gathering that you said that if you're an alien Trump, you would think you would win the debate. You had Kirk Cameron on your podcast. You've ordered Fox News. I feel like this might be your soft migration to the right, Shane.
No. And if you listen to the Kirk Cameron episode, Alex really wanted to have someone have a conversation where it wasn't just attacking someone and kind of just having a civil conversation with somebody you disagree with everything they stand for. And that's how we kind of teed up the conversation, because she feels like that's the way to actually get a resolve on things rather than always being the enemy. That's what we were trying to do. But it was an interesting conversation. But yeah, I'm definitely not leaning right at all. But I CNN I find a little bit annoying at times.
Yeah, I will. To your point there, Shane, I do sometimes wish that like Fox would have, because they hosted a Pete Buttigieg town hall, which actually converted a lot of Fox viewers to like, oh, this guy seems actually pretty reasonable. And Pete Buttigieg is a very like center left candidate. And yeah, because when you're only speaking, to your own kind, you kind of, there's no opportunity for any bridge building. And so sometimes I wonder like, it would be awesome if you had some more good faith conversations, between people on different sides of the spectrum. If only, and I say this not to sort of support any of those beliefs, but only to move the ball forward to a more progressive place.
Of course. And I tend to believe people more if they're saying, oh, here's what we like about this and here's what we don't like.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's times where they'll take like a quote of his and they'll go super hard on it. And it's like, I watched that. That actually isn't kind of how he said it. And he says so many crazy things. You don't need to go after this one that is actually innocuous or not the way he meant it.
Because then he goes, that's not what I meant. And then you go, I kind of agree with what Trump is saying because that's not what he meant. Yeah. I know that. But, absolutely. But it doesn't. Yeah.
All right. Do you guys want to get to a little Shaney surprise here to wrap this episode up?
Yeah, man.
Yes, please.
Do you guys know who John Wayne Bobbitt is? Max, this question's for you.
Don't.
Okay,
you don't?
Can I just say that I've come to really enjoy when we started Shane Surprise when you go, do you guys know who? And then I cannot wait for the name.
Well, I know Mike knows who this person is, but I knew Max is like the Erica of the group right now. Erica's not here today, unfortunately, but you're good because you sometimes don't know references like this. So
okay.
John Wayne Bobbitt got his penis cut off in the middle of the night. Do you know this story?
Every Shane surprise is somebody getting the penis cut off. Honestly, every single time.
It's so funny. It's so funny because I was telling Alex because I sometimes get Alex to help me procure these stories, and I was like, I don't want to talk about like farts, bodily functions, dicks. And then I just got onto this story and I was like, I'm going to find something better. Like we're actually going to have a real conversation. I couldn't find anything better than this story, but I think it could spark an interesting conversation that's like beyond dicks and whatnot. But this is just a lead into it. So John Wayne Bobbitt got his penis cut off in the middle of the night after an argument with his girlfriend. They found his penis.
What year is this?
This was in the 90s. It was like a big thing on like late night talk shows like Jay Leno and Letterman would joke about it like every night. It was like the OJ trial, but penis related. And,
about the wife, and why she did it. Lorena
Bobbitt.
Right?
Yeah. And like, it's funny, Bobbitt kind of sounds like a type of last name where you'd like cut a penis off. But they found the penis, they put it back on the guy, and he actually
in a field.
Yeah, it was in a field. They found it, and they glued it back on, or stitched it back on somehow. Point is, they got it back on. He became a porn star, and then.
So this is an inspirational story.
Yeah, but now years
don't
later,
let anything defer your dreams.
But he's back in the news now, and his leg is getting amputated because he got a bad infection on his legs, and now he's probably gonna have to lose his leg. But it just got me thinking back into that initial impetus of him losing his penis. And I was wondering, what is your most annoying habit that would maybe bring your significant other to the brink of something like this?
Dismembering one of us?
Yeah, or just like, I just wanted to use that as a launching point to just talk about, like, are we self-aware enough to know what's annoying about us or drives people nuts? No pun intended.
I thought you were going to go leg or penis if we had to choose.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say which
that's
body
a good
part.
one. Okay, let's use that as the that's way
No,
better.
your question's more interesting.
Yours was
Shane.
far
Yeah,
more
but
deep.
I do want to start it with the leg or penis.
Leg.
You get rid of the leg?
I think so. They got great prosthetics now. A functioning penis is like, you ain't getting that back. I can learn to walk on a prosthetic.
Interesting. I think penis. The prosthetic would seem to be hindering like my day to day in a much more significant way. But I get that like penis also does other stuff that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say leg, like I want to keep the leg, and just to be like done with the nagging thing that the penis causes. Like I don't want that like nagging, like, oh, have sex today. It gets kind of annoying, right? So, but I do think it's really important to have sex, even though it is kind of annoying to always have that kind of thing nagging at you. But yeah, I would lose the leg.
Okay. So what's the trait that is the most annoying that would cause your partner to do something like that? That is a good
question.
Yeah, I think I know yours, Max.
What is it, Shane? You tell me.
Well, I was going to say maybe you can drive people nuts with your indifference.
Indifference?
Like maybe someone's like, come on, just like, because I find with a lot of things, you're like, I don't know. Like, you know, like maybe Lauren's like, make a fucking decision, and then she'll like cut your dick off. Like she wouldn't do that, you know, but
I think this just speaks to my ability to see, you know, all sides and learn from everyone's personal experiences and be sympathetic to that. I think that's a quality I have, to be honest.
Oh, maybe it's your greatest strength. What's your biggest weakness, though?
That's a good one. I mean, I've been told that I kind of eat loudly and I scrape with a metal fork if I'm like eating like the bottom of a bowl or a plate. That sound really drives Lauren nuts. I think that would drive her to kill me or to cut off a piece of my body. I think that would be the big one. Sometimes I toot in the morning. That's the thing that she doesn't love. I don't know.
This just goes for another 45 minutes.
And then
yeah.
I'm sure
It's a
there's
great
other
question.
stuff. Ash, if you're listening, which you are, just text me the thing that I annoy you the most about.
That would be. I can't wait
Ash,
to hear.
Yeah,
an
she
answer.
probably knows the best.
Please. Okay, Ash is texting. Mike, go ahead.
I would say the thing that I think annoys her. One of the things I do know annoys her is if I'm drinking, like say like there's hoops on and I'm having a couple of beers or whatever, I start to go like the more buzzed I get, like I audibly enjoy my drink, so it's just like and by like
you make
number
it sound
4,
like you're in a commercial or something.
yeah, I don't know, maybe it's like something I picked up from commercials, but you know, I'm just there's times where she'll just look at me and go and I'm like, sorry, don't cut off my penis. And then I would say the other, that's like sort of an audible noise that can be very annoying to her. But I would say the thing that really annoys her is if it's like, say I'm going to hoop or whatever, right? I'm going to go shoot basketball. And they'll be like, I'll be home in like 10 minutes or I'll be home at 1. But then it's like, if I'm really getting into basketball and then it's like, I don't get home till 1:30, she's like, overshoot. She's like, if tell me you'll be home at 2 and surprise me at 1:20. She's like, but you do the other thing. And I'm like, but the only reason I do that is because I really am aspiring. I want to be home for you at that time. I got caught up. Life happens, man.
Or just say, I meant AM. Because you want to get some beers after the basketball, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm 12 hours early. Get off my back. So those are two
Also,
that I would
I
say.
should ask. I should ask Dan because Dan would know some good ones too. But Ash got back to me. She's texting me. She said, it's incredibly obvious when you aren't paying attention. That's one. So like if I'm like walking with her and I'm like, and I'm sort of, I'm on my phone or something, that really drives Ash nuts, which is totally fair. But the other one though is like, you always like to advance things without thinking of all the annoying shit involved because you don't do it.
Yeah, those are two very good ones.
Yeah, that's very, very good. And yeah, sorry, Ash, you're the best. Shane, what about you?
Oh, I'm very nitpicky. Like I'm very flawed, but with Alex, like everything she does, I'll act like, oh, I would have done it a little bit better than that, or oh, don't do that. Why would you put the drink on the corner when it's gonna just knock off and fall on the floor? And I'm always giving her advice on how to be cleaner and more organized. When me myself, I'm a very messy person, so I'm actually infuriating to live with.
You're like, do as I say, not as I do.
Right. I think, yeah, I know better. I just don't do better. So I like to impart my wisdom, but I don't take my own advice. But yeah, I'm a tough person to live with.
Shane, do you think Alex would cut off your D or your leg?
Well, she loves sex. So,